Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about episode 3 of Cowboy Bebop. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So, Spike is making excuses to stay on the planet they're on, Tharsis, just because he's trying to get information on how to find Vicious, because the guy that acts as the in-between between Anna and Spike relays the message that Vicious knows about him being alive. And now it's a situation of Spike's trying to figure out where Vicious is, trying to get an actual location on him. But till all that information comes out, he's got to convince Jet to stay on the planet without actually telling him why he's actually wanting to stay on the planet. So he uses a bounty, a guy named Hakeem, for that reason. Which, side note, there's many different things. One, that whole walking Sally thing, I'm like, I feel like I vaguely remember that from the anime, maybe? Because there's a lot of stuff about Jet's backstory I completely forgot. Like, the only person's backstory I remember to some extent is Spike's, and even then it's not a lot. And that's why that's why I don't know how much is them going into stuff that wasn't really in the anime and how much was stuff that they are. Because, I just don't remember. But I feel like this doll, I feel like I remember, in the anime, there being, just like in this episode, it's a whole bunch of shenanigans related to this doll. I don't think it was a one-for-one like it is in the anime. I mean, maybe it is. But I feel like I vaguely remember there being shenanigans around this doll as, Jet's trying to get it for his daughter. But even learning about, Chalmers, his former partners, yeah, we fought side by side until the bastard betrayed me. It was homicide was supposed to be a brotherhood, and you have Spike being like, oh yeah, brotherhood that basically took 5 years of your life away from you. That time you would have been with your wife, Elisa. I'm messing it up in my head because of Trails of Cold Steel. That's screwing me up a little bit about how you pronounce that name, because I see it spelled out and I want to say Elisa. It's Alyssa, but I want to say Elisa because I've just trained my brain to read that name that way since I started playing the Cold Steel games. Because that's how it's pronounced in those games too. Tangents and all that aside. But spend time with your wife and your daughter in your own home. And even Spike asking, have you ever thought about, putting a bullet in the guy? And at the time, Jet didn't answer, but he does later on. But other than that, there was a whole Woodcock situation, which I love how flirty and how naughty she is. I'm like, I definitely don't remember that, but once again, could have been a thing from the anime. I'm just not remembering how flirtatious she is with and even the fact is that she likes Spike too, and Spike's like, oh, I like that. She's my favorite person, and it's Spike, keep your eye on the ball. It's whoa, I'm not Woodcock here. But it's yeah, because. They're going after Hakeem, and the fact is right, he's making a whole point to show his face and everything. It's yeah, that is interesting. It's oh, you were right. He's wait, what'd you say again? He's what? No, say that again. What you just said. You were right. He's oh, yeah. Yeah, I just had to, make it ceremonial, It's almost it doesn't come up that often. He's oh, so good. So basically, they start they plan on jamming his because he has a face a device to disguise himself, his face and stuff like that. So it's right, let's find this device, and we'll jam his device, and he'll have to go to one of the 2 brothels that are here that will allow him to get it repaired. So. And obviously he shows up at one, and Spike goes toe-to-toe with him. I did like the whole, it seems like such a, classic, almost like a martial arts thing. You'd see it in, a Jackie Chan movie or something. It's Hakeem has this big pipe, and then Spike pulls out a, smaller one. I almost thought they weren't going to let it, he wasn't going to pull it out at all, because the first time he tugged on it, it didn't come out. I thought the whole bit was going to be, but it's no, he pulls it out, and it's smaller, and Spike just throws it at him. But, yeah, it definitely feels like that, in that moment, it felt like a, it's probably definitely a very Cowboy Bebop thing, but it feels like a very Jackie Chan type of that feels like a classic Jackie Chan movie thing you would see happen, Well, I'm sure the argument could be that's a classic martial arts movie trope thing to happen, when you're kind of fighting to use the environment. But I feel out of any martial arts movie or just action movie like that. I feel like Jackie Chan movies are the ones that always go like above and beyond with like using the environment to your advantage. Tangents and all that aside. Once again, you got to give it up to Spike's like being able to keep it so cool under pressure. Fact is, he got kicked into the sign and was falling. He was like, "No, I'm good," and it fell backwards. And Jet had to like grab him and was holding on to him all while smoking upside down. Like now that in particular thing, I'm like, I feel like I remember that from the anime too. I don't remember, but it's like, and Jet's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm waiting for you to pull me up." And then you see him looking left and right. And you're like, I'm pretty sure. If you were in between boobs in the anime, they were definitely covered. They definitely went. I'm definitely sure that's a Netflix thing of like letting boobs all hang out, like nipples and all that, like letting it all hang out in that moment. I love that, like, because Jet literally spent like $35K on this doll from like a black market dealer, and the doll got trashed on the way there. You know, so he was initially going to leave Tharsis to go somewhere else to look for it, but Spike convinced him to stay here. They were getting trouble at the club because it's like, right, all the damage they caused is like, fine. Because I love that line from Spike where he was like, you know, Hakeem, he's got to have a girl. Yeah, it's like, yeah, he's got to have a girl. I mean, I do. I mean, I would. I'm like, and this episode made me go like, wait, I did not remember Spike being the perv that he is. Like, I remember him kind of being super laid back, but he could be serious. I completely didn't remember him being a perv. And when they perv him out this episode, I'm like, yo, you're a freak, Spike. I didn't remember that. Not unless that's some licenses the Netflix show is taking, but I was like, I was loving that when they're talking to Greta later on, and it's just like, she was talking about how much of a cheap bastard Hakeem is. It's like, yeah, how could he not get the blah, blah, blah anaconda thing or whatever? And it's like, oh. And it's just like, oh man, like Spike is enjoying himself so much, and even Jet's just kind of like, yeah, let's go. And I love that she stops him to be like, wait, are you a cheap bastard? And he's like, not by choice, mistress. And he's just like, it kind of winks to her, and then he sniffs her. He's just like, oh, I'm like, you're such a freak, Spike. Because I even love Jet was like, ma'am, miss, and then Spike had to be like, no, Jet. Sorry, mistress. Like, I was like, no, this is my territory. Let me show you how it's done, Jet. I was like, man, I did not remember him being a pervert, dude. If that's something from the anime, like, I completely blanked that out. But if this is something they're doing for the TV show, I really like that. Like, either way, like, I don't remember that being a part of Spike's personality. But maybe it was. But yeah, circling back to it, they did have that conversation about, like, right, if you had the chance, like, would he kill, shoot Chalmers? And he's like, no, I wouldn't, just because I'd want that bastard to, like, I'd want him to suffer, like, putting a bullet in would just be too easy. But, yeah, like, he wouldn't do that. And that in itself changed everything, because it's like, right, this is a guy that took literally kind of everything from you, and you're not willing to kill him like that. He's like, yeah, he's like, oh, like, I'd take him in a dark alley and shove my, like, hand. I forgot what he was saying he was going to do, but he was like, yeah, I'm not bitter in any shape or form. But that all put things in perspective for Spike. They ultimately, talking to Greta, found out, like, oh, he had a hound, he was a dog, which, that's another thing, too, like, and this isn't just a Cowboy Bebop thing. I feel like this was me when it came to anime in general when I was younger. I don't remember a lot of the world building for Cowboy Bebop. Maybe there were little things here and there. I don't know how much they went into it in the anime. Because you also have to remember too, it's a 26 episode anime. There are manga that are different from the anime that maybe they went into a little bit more of the stuff. A lot of that. But regardless, the fact is they bring up, like, oh yeah, like, dogs, because Jet and Spike are like, whoa. Jet's like, I can't remember the last time I saw a real dog. I'm like, oh, so, like, that's a world building thing that I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like, why is that? Like, most dogs died out in on Earth, and maybe there's, like, very few left. I don't know a lot of that world building, like, if that was ever brought up. Because the reason why I was talking about, like, this isn't just a Cowboy Bebop thing, like, because when Cowboy Bebop came out, like, if we're being generous, like, I know the anime came out, like, 98, but I'm assuming that's Japan. And I'm assuming here, it was, like, maybe 99. And I don't even know if that's when I originally saw it. I might have saw it 99 or at the very least a couple years later. When Cowboy Bebop originally came out here, potentially in the U.S., I was 7 years old. So to me, like when I was in elementary school, all I cared about was Dragon Ball Z. I liked other animes too. Sure, like growing up, I loved like Yu Yu Hakusho, Inuyasha, Cowboy Bebop, Trigun, Wolves Reign, and stuff like that. But like certain things I still liked, but it's like I like DBZ because it was like a full-blown action thing. So that's what like I've always gravitated to. Like when I was younger, that's what I gravitated to. I mean, to be fair, like I was obsessed with Dragon Ball Z as a kid. So like that's why I'm saying like I've not really watched Cowboy Bebop now that I'm older. So there's a lot of elements to it. Probably a lot of philosophical reference like elements and just world building that I probably didn't pay attention to or really latch on to. Because also I wasn't the biggest sci-fi person either. Like I didn't really start getting into sci-fi until like I was like late teens, early 20s. So it could be like, you know, certain elements of it I would probably appreciate way more now as an adult. So that's why I'm like, that's why I'm so curious about the world building of Cowboy Bebop, because I don't remember it much. So that's why I'm like wondering if it was like little stuff sprinkled here and there in episodes, because I feel like they never made a point to do a lot of world building. It's just like, this is the world, you learn little things here and there as the series progresses. But like I said, I could be wrong. It's because that dog thing kind of got me, because it turns out, because at first they found out Hakeem was killing people related to people being from Earth. So it's like, yeah, as long as you're not from Earth, you don't have to worry about it. But then like there's a whole thing of him with all these dogs, and he's trying to pull a shotgun on, and they're like looking super cute and adorable. You're like, what are you doing? And I love that Spike and Jet found him with all the dogs, and he's like playing with them. He's talking about how cute they are, and then it's like, what are you doing? And it's like he has no intention of selling the dogs. It's actually really tragic. Once again, just like Cowboy Bebop being what it is, there's a lot of depressing elements to it. But the depressing element is that the dogs are the reason why he wanted to come after the dogs is because his rich people from Earth, like, rather than helping other people, like they took up spaces on the pods that escaped Earth. Those pods, they filled them with their dogs. He's like, my parents work for rich people like this, and rather than giving my parents who work for them a pod, they rather serve. So that's why he's trying to kill these dogs, because it's like, right, I'm trying to take away from them the thing that they cared about most, because dogs are like children to these people, you know, in the sense that like, oh, these pets might as well be their kids, especially for the rich. So it's like taking these away from them was kind of like his main motivator. But when the time came, he couldn't kill them because like they're so cute and adorable and they're so innocent, and just like Spike and Jet are just kind of like, yeah. And he's just like, you know what? I deserve this, and he's about ready to kill him. So they're like, whoa. Like, you don't want to do that. Like, your life is worth a lot. I mean, it's like worth 15 minutes. He's like, oh, that's a lot. And Spike's like, yeah, I mean, it's not our biggest bounty. Spike, I mean, he's like, it's the biggest we've ever come across. And he's like, really? Oh, then I will go to jail. You guys will get your kill, and I'll get my punishment. It's like, man, and even Spike's like, man, you've got some self-esteem issues. He's like, yeah, I know. And all of a sudden, he gets blown away. You're like, Jesus. The cops killed him because they're like, one, he's like, Spike's like, you just didn't want to pay the bounty. He's like, that's a part of it, but I'm assuming like the rich folk also wanted him, like they wanted Hakeem to pay. So I guess it's either I'd chalk it up to either like they just didn't want them to get the bounty because that when they had to pay out. So who wants to pay out that much money? Two, this way they probably get rewarded from the rich people for killing Hakeem, and the fact is that they're in the cops' debt and stuff like that, and whatever the case may be, like, yeah, just kind of like disrespecting Spike, but Jet's kind of like, it's fine, don't worry about it, and he takes Ein with him to his daughter, and he's like, oh, I don't have you, which I was also like, do they have regular neighborhoods like that? Because I'm trying to remember locations in Cowboy Bebop. I'm like, I think a lot of the locations in the anime were like just regular places too, just, you know, different planets and stuff like that. But it looked like regular like Earth architecture, at least like modern contemporary like architecture. So, but I just like that like that looked like just a suburb he was in. It's like, I don't know if that's just like a live adaptation thing or was like were there just like regular ass suburbs to him? I'm guessing. But he brings Ein to his daughter. I'm like, is this how you met Ein? I don't remember. Probably once again, probably another licensing thing, like licensing in the regard of like they're taking their own creative licenses with it. Is what I'm trying to say. I could never think of like the phrasing I was trying to think of in that, but it's like yeah, your creative licenses of doing kind of your own thing with it. But I was like, is this the circumstances under which they met Ein, and how Jet ended up getting stuck with Ein? Because it's like you definitely can't sell the dog now because your daughter is like, oh, it's yours, so I can call him whenever, right? And he's like, of course. Because his ex is like, no, she can't, like, the taxes it would take for that dog. He's like, yeah, but I'm just trying to be a part of my daughter's life. I'm like, what? Maybe she doesn't know about the histories between him and Chalmers. Like, maybe she doesn't know, like, what went down with them, or maybe he's kept it quiet, or, like, because it's like, why is she so okay with that dick? But maybe it's like everything points towards Jet, so nothing Jet says would ever convince her otherwise. So maybe that's what it is. So it's like things are definitely contentious between him and his ex. But it seems like him and his, because at first when he shows up, I was almost scared. Like, is this a little girl? We're gonna be like, who are you? Hey, Mister. But it's like no, she recognizes her dad because he says like in his on one hand he can count the amount of time he's actually ever seen Kimmy in the past couple years, and you're like, that's depressing and heartbreaking. So, but interesting reason to keep Ein. That's definitely going to, if you're getting taxed for keeping a dog, that definitely is going to explain why you're going to probably be even lower on the money front. I mean, hell, you just burnt a $35K hole in your pocket for nothing for a plastic doll, but it's like you didn't have much choice because your daughter wanted it, and it all ended up down the toilet anyway. But it all worked out in the end because you got a dog out of it. Granted, now you're stuck taking care of the dog, so your daughter's happy about the present. It's just like it's a present that you have to keep and take care of all the times, and shenanigans ensued with that from what I remember. But other than that, another aspect of this episode is we have Julia at Anna's place and reminiscing a little bit about her time on stage, and she wants to talk to Anna specifically. Well, she came to Anna, and Anna recognizes like right the scarf she's wearing, and immediately sees the bruises on her neck. It's like if it was someone else, I'd cut his eyes out, but she can't. You know, he's too connected. You know, so it's like you can't do anything without against kind of attack on him. It's an attack against the syndicate. So. But she's like, it's okay, we'll make it through. Like, the fact is, it's like, it seems like this has happened time and time again. And she's even telling Julia, like, to leave. But Julia's like, no, like, I don't have a choice. She's like, we all have choices. And the question, I guess, then becomes like, because obviously it's like an abusive relationship. Because, like, it's like, oh, later on, he's like, right, telling his people, like, make sure to get that chocolate that Julia wants. It's like, yeah, I got to make up for the fact is I pulled a gun on her because the leaders of the elders of the syndicate told me to put a bullet in her. And then afterwards, even though, like, I didn't have to kill her, I proceeded to strangle her because she upset me and made me feel small, you know, and I'm like, my ego was hurt, so I nearly strangled her. We also saw him, because they had to shut down operations, it's like, things will be shut down temporarily, but we'll keep things up later on when we have the opportunity. And I love that he's making this excuse about, like, all right, the workers, we'll keep them up in the hotel, keep them well, you know, taken care of until the jobs come back. And one of his subordinates is like, really? He's like, basically, he's like, no, you idiot. And then they proceed to kill everyone. The whole thing of, like, blinding them, I'm like, where else have I seen that before? And I was like, I want to say probably Daredevil, because all like the people worked like dealing with the drugs and stuff were blind. So I'm wondering if it was something in that same regard, because these people were like they weren't just like naturally blind. These people had their like eyes sewn shut, because it's like, yeah, if you can't see anything, you can't be used as a witness against them. But it's like, right, you're useless. Rather than like taking a chance someone can pick you up later on, it's like, I'm just gonna pop you all now. It's like, cool. Also, don't forget Julia's chocolate. But at the same time, Spike had ordered a weapon at one of the silos to be dropped out, and he gets locked and loaded and has Vicious in his sights. And he talks about, yeah, he wanted to shoot Vicious, But that conversation with Jet, as well as the conversation with Hakeem, changed things for him, because it's like, right, me being mad at you for you doing you and being you, it'd be like me, the same example Hakeem made of being mad at water for being wet, you know? So it's like, it changed his mind about it, but it's like, yeah, you did try to kill me and everything, but Vicious is like, right, you got meddled in my business, so I kind of had no choice but to take care of you. And it's like, right, oh, you got a new car and everything. And in that moment, Vicious is like, you're watching me. He's like, still hiding behind bulletproof windows? Bullet, snipe shot to the window. Doesn't pierce the glass, but enough to send a shard flying and cutting Vicious' face. And Spike just slowly, casually walks away. Like, yeah, I've got time. It's going to take them a while before they get to this silo, so I'm good. I'm leaving everything behind, too. So, I guess just to let you know, Vicious, if I wanted to, I could have taken you out at any moment and you wouldn't have seen it coming. Probably also the future messaging of, don't come after me, because the next time I won't be so kind as to let you know I'm coming for you and not taking a shot, because next time I will. Or just maybe it's just showing, like, I'm not going to worry about you. I'm going to continue my life, because he doesn't know Spike's new name and everything and new identity, so tracking him down is not going to be that easy. So, but it's definitely going to be interesting to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.